and architect Cooper Copetas, associate and designer at SB Architects. Thanks for speaking with us here on France 24.
Hi, good to see you.
Uh, let's begin with what we know now, and every day we're knowing more about this building. When the collapse first happened, what did you think? And as more information has come out, have they sort of confirmed your initial gut feeling on why this building collapsed?
Yeah, it's sad to say because it really was a catastrophe, but the fact of the matter is this kind of stuff was expected to happen. If it wasn't that building, it would have been another one. Um, you know, what we thought, at least the community of designers, architects, and engineers in Miami thought was, all right, well, there's a whole host of problems that happened. And there may have been one little thing that triggered the whole catastrophe. But in the end, it most likely was issues due to waterproofing, the foundations. I mean, all those buildings were built in an architectural dark age of sorts in the 80s. And yeah, it's a corrosive environment by the beach. So this just we expected something like this to happen, and it did, unfortunately.
You talk about an architectural dark age. The Miami Herald, the local newspaper there, profiling the developer who had that tower built, along with several others, and the article describes this period of the early 1980s when there was a lot of easy money in Miami. And the implication is with which to influence local boards to bend the rules.
Yeah, well, that influence won't bend my cynicism because that kind of attitude is still ongoing today. The truth is, though, that like currently the building code in Miami is already really strict. So anything that was built after Hurricane Andrew is pretty solid, and odds of it, if it can resist a hurricane now, odds it won't collapse, unless there was like an error in calculation. But thing is, anything built before 1992 in Miami, especially on this like island, which originally was this barrier sandbar, anything that was built there is essentially cursed by this this variably predictable quality of or unpredictable quality of infrastructure. And what you're saying is true. A lot of times there's some palm greasing left and right to get things built real quick. So they might not have done the waterproofing on a really corrosive environment on something that's just sand. A lot of times unless those buildings, what you do or what they did was they would dig these piles really, really deep, right? But up until a point where it hit eulite limestone, which is a layer underneath the sand. And once they got enough force pushing back up, then they'd go, all right, this is more than enough for us to put a big building there. The problem is water flows through eulite limestone. It's a sponge. And over time, if you're building stuff next to it, like the high rise that's next to it now, you're going to shake stuff. And odds are they were shaking the sand that was around those piles. And right above those piles would have been this pad foundation, essentially, this big platform, like a mat. So what you're doing is you're shaking the sand underneath that mat that may or may not have been waterproofed, creating these pockets. And what most likely happened is one of those pockets really led to, more fissuring, spalling from the salt, and essentially,
And
collapse.
so this meeting in 2018 of the condominium board, where they come to the realization that there's corrosion because of the salt and et cetera. And then there this long about process with resignations and everything before they get to the point, which they never got to, of making the building more structurally sound. Can they be made more structurally sound, these buildings that were built in that period?
Yeah, they can. There is some buttress reinforcement happening around Miami Beach. I don't want to say this too loudly, but if you walk around the streets that are parallel to Lincoln Road in Miami Beach, you'll see buildings, they're straight out of Venice, where they're starting to go like this. So they're sinking. And some developers are trying to prop them back up. So there are ways to brace it. I don't think it's the most I mean, some of them may need to be torn down, unfortunately, and those that don't need to be torn down need to have definitely more rigorous inspections. Probably like reduce the code regulation upgrade from like 50 years to actually more like 20 years now. And there's also a technological solution too in terms of monitoring the infrastructure.
So when this condominium board meeting happens in 2018, should they have known better, or they didn't anticipate there would be this much danger?
They should have known better is the easy way to say it, because we all got hindsight now. But I'm sure they didn't understand. They may not have understood the full extent of the damage. And again, it would have been a host of many different problems, some of them that may not have been picked up by the inspector or the engineers or the contractors also. So it's tough to say, really. But really, I mean, it's kind of this rule. Most buildings in Miami Beach built around that time are sinking. So you should probably figure, we should probably pay more attention to actually reinforcing this thing structurally now instead of postponing it.
Is that going to happen?
Well, it could happen to other buildings. Hell, I mean, the thing is, sorry for swearing, but the thing is that there are buildings, 3 other buildings that are built by the same architect, same engineers, I guess, and developer that are right next door. And the problem is, this is a blight in Miami. And here comes the cynicism. But the fact that the people who are living in the buildings next door, many of them are saying they want to stay in there, even though they know the risks. And it's that level of indifference that people have here in Miami that can permeate all the way up to the regulators also. And so, sure, this catastrophe, this tragedy happened, but in the end, there's this general indifference to what happens in Miami.
But surely, Cooper Copetas, the whole world watched a few years back when you had those hurricanes, and we suddenly were thinking, hey, Miami Beach is right at sea level, and with sea levels rising, the whole urban planning of Miami Beach is going to have to be rethought. The whole world watched at that moment. Surely that indifference is gone.
No, not in the slightest. I can tell you that this debate has been going on for a long time in Miami, in the world especially, but in Miami. And the reality is that Miami's indifference leads us, and I'm guilty too, it leads us to cozying up to quick fix solutions, popular solutions that are in the moment, but that aren't long lasting. And sometimes we even cozy up to snake oil salesmen who will sell you, who are contractors or engineers or tech entrepreneurs, who will sell you solutions that do not work. And they sell them to people in Miami who are scientifically illiterate, who are architecturally or urbanistically illiterate, and who try to apply these solutions in the real world at the cost of the taxpayer. This is Miami. So this catastrophe, though awful, is also representative of how Miami operates. And it's not a good representation. It's a terrible reflection of how we do things here. And I'm really hoping that this will change our attitude about things.
All right. Cooper Copetas of SB Architects, many thanks for speaking with us on France 24.